Rain poured from the sky like it was trying to wash the world away. Daniel Reed gripped the steering wheel tighter as his luxury black SUV crept along the twisting forest road. The wipers screeched across the windshield, barely keeping up with the sheets of rain. This wasn't the way he usually drove home. In fact, he hadn't planned on being anywhere near these woods. But something had pulled him here, a strange, unexplainable urge that made him take the exit just past the gas station. It was like his gut had taken the wheel and refused to let go. The road narrowed. The tall pine trees leaned in from both sides, their dark silhouettes shifting in the storm like figures in a nightmare. His high beams cut through the fog just enough to see the sharp turns ahead. That's when he saw her. A small figure in the middle of the road. Barefoot. Drenched. Motionless. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The car skidded, tires sliding on the slick surface. His heart jumped to his throat. The vehicle stopped just feet from her. He stared. She didn't move. He threw open the door and jumped out, rain immediately soaking through his shirt and hair. The girl looked about 13, 14 at most. She wore a thin white dress that clung to her skin like a second layer. Her arms were wrapped around herself, shoulders hunched as if she were holding her soul inside. Her dark hair was matted with rain and dirt. And her eyes, those eyes, were wide with fear but locked onto his. "Hey!" Daniel called out over the rain. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. She took a tiny step back, almost like a reflex. But she didn't run. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, lowering his voice. He moved slowly, carefully, taking off his coat and holding it out. "Here. Take this. You're freezing." She stared at the coat, then at him. Her lips parted. Her voice came out like a whisper carried by the wind. "Don't take me back there." Daniel blinked. "Back where?" Her lips trembled. She said nothing more. He stepped closer and gently placed the coat around her shoulders. She didn't resist. She was shivering uncontrollably, teeth chattering. She weighed barely anything. Her skin was ice cold. "We need to get you warm," he said. "Come with me. Please." After a long pause, she gave the slightest nod. Daniel helped her into the passenger seat. She curled into herself, clutching the coat tightly, her eyes never leaving the trees behind them. As he drove, he turned the heater on full blast. He glanced at her, trying to make sense of it all. A young girl. Alone. In the middle of the forest. In a storm. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lena," she said, her voice fragile. "I'm Daniel," he replied. "Where are your parents, Lena? Were you lost?" She hesitated. "They're not looking for me." The answer gave him pause. He tried again. "Were you running away from someone?" Lena looked out the window. "They didn't like what I knew. So they locked me away." Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine that had nothing to do with the weather. "Who locked you away?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the trees, as if expecting them to come alive and pull her back. He should have taken her straight to the police. That was the logical thing to do. But something inside him said no. This girl had already been failed by adults. She didn't need flashing lights and handcuffs and cold waiting rooms. She needed comfort. Safety. Someone who wouldn't ask her to explain the unexplainable. Daniel made a sharp turn onto an old dirt road, one only he knew about. It led to a place few others visited anymore, his mother's old countryside house. She'd lived there since his father's death. But now, she was bedridden, her illness worsening each month. She rarely spoke. Doctors came and went, but nothing helped. Maybe, he thought, this girl would be a strange but welcome distraction for her. Maybe fate had connected two broken souls on this stormy night. As they neared the house, Lena straightened suddenly. Her body tensed. "Wait," she said sharply. "Don't take me there." Daniel glanced at her. "It's safe, I promise. My mother lives there. No one else." But Lena's breathing had quickened. Her hands clutched the coat like armor. "Someone in that house already knows me." He slowed the car. "Lena, that's not possible. You've never been here before." She turned to him with eyes full of something that didn't belong to a child, something ancient and knowing. "That's what you think." Daniel stared at her, shaken. He pulled up to the old stone house, headlights casting eerie shadows on the ivy-covered walls. The wind howled as he opened the passenger door. Lena didn't move. He walked around and gently helped her out. She kept looking at the front windows like she expected someone, or something, to appear. Inside, the house was quiet. Warm. Daniel helped her out of the wet coat and gave her a blanket. She sat by the fireplace while he started a fire, watching every move like a deer waiting for a trap to spring. "Would you like something to eat?" he offered. She nodded faintly. He headed to the kitchen and heated up some soup. When he returned, she was sitting upright, hands folded in her lap, staring at the staircase. "Is your mother upstairs?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes. She's not well." "She remembers me," Lena whispered. "Even if she doesn't know it yet." Daniel froze. "Lena, what are you talking about?" She looked at him. "The room with the green curtains. There's a diary hidden behind the second drawer. She used to write about me." Daniel's mouth went dry. "How do you know that?" Lena looked down at her hands. "I don't remember everything. Just flashes. Feelings. Smells. But when I got near the house, it all started coming back." Daniel didn't respond. He stood there for a moment, staring at her like she was a ghost. Then he turned and walked up the stairs. His mother, Caroline Reed, lay in bed, eyes half open, breathing shallow. She hadn't spoken in days. He walked to the old chest of drawers in the corner and pulled open the second drawer. Nothing. Then, on impulse, he reached behind it. His fingers touched the worn leather of a small notebook. His heart pounded. He flipped it open. The first pages were covered in his mother's careful handwriting. And then he saw it. "She came to me again in my dream. The girl in the forest. Same eyes. Same voice. But she never ages. I see her every year on the same night." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. He flipped further. "I saw her when I was a child. Everyone said she wasn't real. But she left footprints. Real ones. They vanished by morning. I kept the shoes she wore. They're still in the attic." He stumbled back. He had to know. He rushed to the attic, climbed up the creaky steps, and opened the old wooden trunk near the window. Inside, among old toys and photo albums, sat a pair of small, muddy shoes. They matched the ones Lena was wearing when he found her. Exactly. He sat down hard on the attic floor, the truth crashing down on him like a second storm. Downstairs, the fire crackled. Lena sipped her soup quietly, her eyes calm now. She already knew. Daniel Reed couldn't feel his hands. He sat in the attic, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the tiny, mud-stained shoes resting inside the old wooden trunk. He hadn't touched them. He didn't want to. Something about their presence felt sacred, and terrifying. His mother had written about the girl in her dreams. About how she had seen her every year on the same night, always the same age, always in the forest. She said no one believed her, but she kept the shoes. A reminder. A warning. And now, that same girl was sitting downstairs by the fireplace. Daniel closed the trunk slowly and stood, heart pounding like a drumbeat inside his ribs. This wasn't just a lost girl anymore. This was something else. Something no logic could explain. As he stepped back downstairs, the firelight danced softly on Lena's face. She looked calm, almost peaceful, like she belonged there. She didn't look up when he entered. "I read the diary," he said quietly. She nodded, still staring into the flames. "I know." Daniel hesitated. "Those shoes, in the attic. They're yours, aren't they?" She finally turned her head. "They were. A long time ago." He walked slowly to the couch across from her and sat down. "Lena, who are you?" The room fell silent except for the rain still tapping on the windows. "I don't fully remember," she said after a moment. "But I know this house. I know the woman upstairs. And I know you." Daniel blinked. "Me?" Lena nodded. "You were here once before, too. You were just a baby. She rocked you to sleep in that chair over there." She pointed to the wooden rocker in the corner, Daniel's late father's favorite chair. No one had sat in it for years. "I remember you crying," she continued softly. "She told you stories. About the girl who came from the forest." Daniel sat still, chills crawling up his back. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "You're just a kid." "Am I?" she said, her voice calm but strangely distant. Later that night, as the storm passed and the wind quieted, Daniel sat alone at the dining table, reading every page of his mother's old diary. Entry after entry described a girl, always the same, appearing in her dreams. But then, the dreams turned real. Caroline wrote about waking up and finding footprints on the floor. Her jewelry box open. A glass of water moved. Things no one else noticed. She never told anyone, except in these pages. And now, years later, Lena had walked into his life, not by chance, but by some strange pattern. Was she a ghost? A memory come alive? Or something he wasn't ready to understand? Daniel's phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Claire. He'd missed several meetings that day, all important. He ignored the call. Nothing mattered right now except Lena, and the secrets she carried. The next morning, Daniel brought breakfast up to his mother. She lay quiet, barely awake. Her eyes fluttered open when she smelled the food. "Mom," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" She nodded faintly. "There's someone downstairs I want you to see." Caroline blinked, her mouth moving slightly. "She's here, isn't she?" Daniel froze. "Who?" he asked. Caroline's pale lips trembled. "The girl. From the trees." His blood ran cold. "She came again," his mother whispered. "Just like before." Daniel looked down at the tray of food, hands shaking. "You remember her?" "She was crying," Caroline said, a tear rolling down her cheek. "And I never helped her." He left the room in silence. Downstairs, Lena was sitting in the kitchen, legs swinging from the tall stool, eating toast. She looked more relaxed, almost like she belonged in the house now. "She remembers," Lena said, before Daniel could speak. He sat across from her. "Lena, why are you here? Why now?" "I think I'm supposed to find something," she said quietly. "Something that was hidden." "Hidden by who?" "Your father." Daniel frowned. "My father died before I could even remember him." Lena tilted her head. "Did he leave anything behind?" Daniel thought hard. His father had been a quiet man, serious, mysterious, sometimes distant. He died when Daniel was just 2 years old. His belongings had mostly been packed away, but the basement, his father's private space, was left untouched. They called it the vault. Now, something told him the time had come. The lock clicked open. The door creaked. Inside, everything was untouched. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, old photographs, rolls of blueprints, strange mechanical parts, and dozens of wooden boxes. Daniel walked slowly, brushing dust off a file marked, Private, 1989. Lena went straight to a corner of the room and knelt down. "It's here," she said softly. "He left it here for me." Daniel turned. She pulled out a small wooden box, wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully. Inside were several photos, old, faded, torn at the edges. One showed a girl. Lena. Same face. Same eyes. But the photo was dated 1987. Daniel's heart pounded. That's impossible. Lena picked up a letter from beneath the photos. It was handwritten. The ink was smudged with time. To the one who comes back. If you're reading this, it means you made it through again. The loop didn't break. But you're closer now. Remember. The answer is not in the past or the future, but in what you lost. Forgive her. That's the key. Er. Lena held the letter tight. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes. Daniel felt dizzy. What does that mean? Loop? Forgive who? Lena opened her eyes. I think it means your mother. Daniel looked at her, confused. What did my mother do to you? Lena stood up. She made a choice. A long time ago. One that kept me here. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the letter echoing in his mind. Forgive her. That's the key. The next morning, he returned to his mother's room. She looked at him with hollow eyes. She's still here, isn't she? She asked. Yes, he said. She found something my father left. A letter. Caroline closed her eyes. He warned me this would happen. I didn't believe him. Daniel sat beside her. What happened, Mom? Tears slid down her cheeks. She was just a girl. Maybe 10. I saw her wandering near the edge of the forest. She wasn't like the other kids. She remembered things. Said things she shouldn't have known. Daniel nodded slowly. Caroline continued. I was scared. I thought she was cursed. I told your father. He tried to help her. But I locked her out. The storm came. She disappeared. Daniel's chest tightened. I thought she was gone. But every year, on the same night, I saw her. In the woods. In my dreams. Watching. Daniel whispered, You never told anyone? Who would believe me? She said. He sat silently. Then, she forgives you. Caroline opened her eyes. What? Lena. She forgives you. Caroline began to cry, not softly, but deeply, from a place of guilt that had been buried for decades. Outside, the rain stopped. The sun peeked through the trees. Later, Daniel found Lena by the lake behind the house. She was skipping stones. It's lifted, she said without turning. The weight. It's gone. Daniel stood beside her. I don't understand any of this, he admitted. You don't have to, Lena replied. Some things are meant to be felt, not explained. He looked at her. Will you stay? She smiled faintly. Not forever. A strange light shimmered behind her, soft, golden, like the sun through water. I think this time, I'll make it home. Daniel stepped forward. What if I want to help you? You already did, she said. And then her figure flickered. The wind rose. She looked at him one last time. I remember now, she said softly. Tell her thank you. And in the blink of an eye, Lena vanished. Daniel Reed stood alone by the lake, staring at the rippling water where Lena had vanished just moments earlier. The sun was now high, casting golden reflections on the surface, but the silence felt heavier than ever. The words she left behind echoed in his head like a haunting melody. Tell her thank you. But thank you for what? He didn't move for a long time. His thoughts spiraled. What had just happened? Had she truly been real? Or had he imagined it all, brought on by lack of sleep, stress, and the emotional weight of his mother's illness? Still, deep down, something told him Lena wasn't a dream. Her words, her warmth, the way she'd known his house, his family, none of it could have been fiction. But now she was gone. And he was left with more questions than answers. Later that afternoon, Daniel brought tea to his mother, whose color had improved overnight. She sat up straighter in bed, her hands trembling as she held the warm cup. She's gone, isn't she? Caroline asked quietly. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. Yes. Caroline looked away, her eyes moist. I felt it. Like a wind passing through me. I woke up this morning, lighter. I don't know how else to explain it. She forgave you, Daniel said. His mother pressed her lips together to hold back her emotion. I didn't deserve it. Daniel sighed. None of us do. But sometimes, forgiveness is the only thing that sets us free. She looked at him then, her eyes suddenly sharp. There's more, Daniel. I need to tell you something I never shared with anyone. He leaned in. That night, the storm when I left her out there, I saw something. He waited. I went back the next morning, but the woods were quiet. No trace of her. But then, just before I turned to leave, I saw a man. A tall man in a black coat, standing just beyond the trees. Watching me. Daniel's spine stiffened. I didn't recognize him, she continued. But your father, he later told me he'd seen the same man before. Said he always appeared when something important was about to happen. Daniel rubbed his temples. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because I thought I was going crazy. That evening, Daniel returned to the attic. He opened the old trunk again, this time taking out not just the shoes, but the entire contents. Beneath a stack of folded blankets was a yellowed envelope with a brittle wax seal. It was addressed. His heart pounded. Hands shaking, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph and a folded note. The photo was of Lena, smiling, standing beside a younger version of his father near the lake. Dated July 1987. The note read, Son, if you are reading this, the impossible has happened. And you must know the truth. The girl is not a ghost. She is not an illusion. She is something far more extraordinary. She is the key to a pattern that I could never break, no matter how many times I tried. A pattern that resets again and again. Only one person seems to remember it all, and it's her. When she appears, it means the loop is close to ending. But only if someone chooses differently this time. I tried. Your mother couldn't. Maybe you can. Find the man in black. He holds the last piece. Daniel stared at the note, his breath caught in his chest. A loop? A pattern? The man in black? He felt like his life was unraveling before his eyes. He took the photograph and led her downstairs and placed them near the fire. He had to think. He needed clarity. And just as he sat down, something in the fire changed. The flames turned blue. For only a moment. And in the center, a shape formed. A face. Not Lena's. His father's. Daniel jumped to his feet, heart racing. The vision flickered and disappeared. But he knew what he saw. Unable to sleep, Daniel returned to the basement, the vault. He searched through every drawer, every box. Blueprints, notes, journals. One file caught his eye. Project Eclipse, the loop experiment. Inside were diagrams, sketches of circles, time calculations, and notes in code. One page, however, was marked with a single word. Reset. Beneath it, his father's handwriting read. The loop begins with the girl. The loop ends when the truth is faced. To break it, she must be remembered, not feared. Time repeats, but the heart chooses. Daniel closed the file slowly. Could it be true? Had this girl, Lena, been appearing to his family for decades? Each time as a test. A sign? A second chance? And had they been failing it, again and again? The next morning, Daniel drove to town. He visited the county records office and asked for any archived files or missing persons reports from 1987. They found a record. Name, Lena Morwood. Age, 10. Status, declared missing, July 15, 1987. Last seen, near Hemlock Forest. Family, unknown. No other details. Just, gone. Daniel's heart sank. She'd been real. She'd been missing. And no one ever found her. He turned to leave but paused at the door. Has anyone ever reported seeing her since? He asked the clerk. The woman paused, then nodded slowly. There's one file. Strange, really. A man reported seeing her in the same forest in 2001, said she hadn't aged a day. But they dismissed it. Thought he was crazy. Daniel exhaled. Not crazy. That evening, he sat by the fire again, holding the old photo. He stared at her smile, the soft outline of his young father beside her, and the lake behind them. He wondered what Lena meant when she said she was getting closer. He needed more answers. And only one place remained. Hemlock Forest. The next morning, Daniel drove to the edge of the woods. The same place where he'd found her that stormy night. The forest felt different now, denser, quieter. Almost expectant. He walked slowly, looking for anything familiar. Then, he heard it. A humming. Soft. Like a lullaby. He followed the sound deeper into the woods until he reached a clearing. And there, at the center, was a man. Tall. Thin. Dressed in a long black coat. He turned as Daniel stepped forward. Mr. Reed, the man said. You know me? The man nodded. I've known your family for generations. Who are you? Daniel demanded. What is this? What is the loop? The man's eyes were calm, ancient. The loop is the cost of forgetting. It's a test. And most fail it. Daniel clenched his fists. Why Lena? Why my family? The man walked slowly to a tree and placed a hand on it. Your father found her once. But he let fear stop him. Your mother saw her, and she let shame control her. You, Daniel, you listened. You forgave. Daniel stepped closer. Is she gone? The man turned. She's free. For now. But the loop doesn't just involve her. You're in it too. What does that mean? It means you must choose what to do with the truth you've been given. Will you hide it like they did, or will you face it? Daniel felt overwhelmed. How does it end? He asked. The man smiled faintly. When someone tells the whole story. He pointed to Daniel's chest. Your heart is the last key. Then he turned, and walked into the mist, vanishing between the trees. That night, Daniel returned home. He sat by his mother's side, holding her hand. "She was never meant to be forgotten," he said. Caroline looked at him. "What will you do now?" He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm going to remember her. I'm going to tell the world. Some stories aren't written in ink. They're etched in time." Daniel Reed sat at his father's old desk, lit only by the soft, flickering glow of a lamp. His hands moved quickly across the paper, his mind racing with every word. He was writing it all down. Every detail. Lena in the forest. Her words to his mother. The picture in the fire. The man in black. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with wealth or expectations. Telling this story wasn't about making peace with the past, it was about breaking something that had haunted his family for generations. But deep down, Daniel knew, if he published the truth, something would push back. Something that didn't want the story told. The next morning, Caroline was stronger. She stood on her own for the first time in weeks. Daniel helped her to the porch where they sat watching the trees sway in the morning wind. "I dreamed of her again," she whispered. "Lena?" She nodded. "She stood at the end of my bed. She didn't say anything. Just looked at me with those eyes. Like she was asking if I was ready." Daniel remained silent. "She looked peaceful," Caroline added. "But also, like she was waiting for something." Daniel reached for his notes. "She's waiting for us to remember. For the truth to live somewhere outside our heads." Caroline frowned. "But will anyone believe us?" Daniel looked out over the trees. "They won't have to. Some truths don't need belief. They need bravery." By noon, Daniel drove to the local newspaper office in town. A small, two-story brick building that smelled like old ink and deadlines. He met with the editor, a gray-bearded man named Cole McKinney. Cole listened quietly as Daniel read the first few chapters of his manuscript. When Daniel finished, the silence in the room was unbearable. Finally, Cole leaned forward. "You expect people to believe a 10-year-old girl from 1987 has reappeared in your life, and your family has been stuck in a time loop?" "I don't expect them to believe," Daniel replied. "I expect them to feel something. To think. To ask themselves, what if?" Cole scratched his beard. "I've read worse pitches. But if this gets out, and people think it's real, you'll be the target of ridicule. Or worse." "I don't care," Daniel said. "This is bigger than me." Cole nodded slowly. "All right. We'll run it. But as a series, anonymous author, for now. Let the story speak before the name." Daniel agreed. By the next week, the first installment of The Girl in the Forest was published under the pseudonym The Watcher's Son. The response was immediate. Thousands of comments. Emails. Messages. Some called it the greatest mystery they'd read. Others called it fiction. But a small group, silent at first, began sharing eerily similar stories. One woman emailed Daniel anonymously. "I saw her. In 2005. I was hiking in Oregon. She asked me if I remembered. I said no. She smiled, and cried." Another man wrote. "Your story matches the journal my grandfather kept. He wrote about a girl who walked out of a lake in 1962. Her name was Lena." Daniel's inbox exploded. He wasn't alone. And neither was Lena. One night, after a long day of reading and replying to messages, Daniel noticed a box sitting at the foot of his door. No return label. Inside was a book, ancient-looking, bound in weathered leather, with a brass clasp holding it shut. There was no title on the cover. Only a small, embossed symbol, an infinity loop wrapped around an open eye. Inside the front cover, a single handwritten line. To the one who finally listens. Daniel flipped through the pages. Each was filled with drawings, symbols, timelines, and names. It was like a map of every sighting of Lena, or someone just like her, going back more than a century. One entry stood out. 1901, Prague. A girl found in a chapel during a lightning storm. Unaged. Claimed to be searching for the broken one. Disappeared within 48 hours. Another. 1945, France. After bombing raid, soldier finds girl in ruins. She speaks English with no accent. Says, "It's almost time." Vanishes into mist. The book spanned continents. Decades. Maybe lifetimes. And every sighting was linked by two things. A loop. And Lena. Daniel returned to the forest. This time, he brought the book. He followed the same path, past the clearing where he'd met the man in black. It was quiet again, but something had changed. The air felt charged. He stopped by an old tree and noticed something he hadn't before, a carving. Faint. Weathered. She waits where the time stands still. Daniel stepped back. The lake. He reached the lake by dusk. The water was still, silver under the dying light. Daniel knelt and opened the book beside the shore. Then he spoke softly into the air. "I remember you, Lena. I remember everything." For a moment, there was nothing. Then. A ripple. She emerged. The same dress. The same soft hair. The same eyes that had haunted his dreams. She stepped onto the shore, not dripping wet, just appearing from the water like it had opened for her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd answer." Lena looked at the book. "You found it." "It found me," he replied. She nodded. "Then it's almost time." Daniel sat on a rock. "Time for what?" "For the loop to choose," she said. "It doesn't end unless the truth is spoken completely. It's tried before, but every time, someone holds back." Daniel's heart pounded. "What's the cost if we don't break it?" Lena looked at him with a sad smile. "You'll forget me again. She'll get sick again. Your children, if you have any, will live this cycle too. Until someone dares to remember the whole truth, no matter how painful." Daniel hesitated. "What if I write the truth, and the world rejects it?" "They will," she said. "But it only takes one reader to believe. Just one heart to feel it." He took her hand. "Then I'll tell it all." She stared at him for a long time. Then whispered, "Good." Later that night, Daniel returned home and found his mother crying. "What happened?" he asked. She held up a photo, one she'd never seen before. It was a picture of her, younger, sitting on a swing in the backyard. Standing behind her was a little girl in a white dress. "She was there," Caroline whispered. "Even then. I just never noticed." Daniel sat beside her. "Maybe she was always watching. Waiting for us to be ready." His mother smiled through her tears. "Then let's finish the story." The next morning, Daniel wrote the final chapter and submitted it to the newspaper. He included everything: the man in black, the book, the sightings from history, the second meeting at the lake. He signed it with his full name, Daniel Reed. No more hiding. Within hours of its publication, the story went viral. News stations covered it. Forums exploded. Skeptics mocked it, but many shared similar sightings, stories, drawings, journal entries. Then, one shocking update arrived. A man in Ireland claimed to have met a girl named Lena, that very morning. She handed him a small book, smiled, and said, "Give this to the one who remembers." The book matched Daniel's. That evening, Daniel sat by the fire again, thinking. The loop was still turning. But it was changing. And as he stared into the flames, he saw something new, a vision of the future. A child playing by the lake. A woman humming softly. Peace. No Lena. She was gone. Free. But Daniel had one more decision to make. Because the man in black had said something else. The loop ends, only when the truth is told. But it shatters, if the truth is believed. And belief was growing. All around the world. The more people believed, the more dangerous it became. Daniel Reed had never expected the story to spread this far. At first, it was whispers. Then the newspapers picked it up. By the end of the week, he was on morning talk shows. The man who found the girl in the forest, that's what they called him. But it wasn't the fame that shook him. It was the message requests. Thousands of them. Emails, social media tags, even letters slid under his door. Not just stories about Lena. Stories of others. A girl in a white dress walked past me in the snow and whispered, "You're next." I saw a man in black standing in my hallway the day your article dropped. He didn't move. Just stared. There's a symbol carved into my basement wall. The same one on your book. Daniel felt it like a rising tide. The story had broken something open. And not everything that came through wanted to help. It was a quiet Thursday morning when the first threat arrived. Daniel was alone in his cabin, finishing his third cup of coffee when he saw it. A note pinned to his front door. Stop writing or she's gone for good. There was no signature. But something about the handwriting chilled him. Angular. Cold. Inhuman. And worse, he couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't been written, but traced, like a memory. He folded the note and tucked it into the strange leather-bound book he'd received weeks earlier. That book had been growing heavier in meaning. It wasn't just a guide, it felt like a warning too. That night, Daniel had a dream. He stood in the woods again, only this time, there were no trees. No stars. No sounds. Just darkness. He turned slowly. A shadow moved. Then another. Voices began to whisper. She wasn't meant to speak. He's pulling too many threads. End the tale. Bury the girl. Daniel opened his mouth to scream, but it wasn't his voice that came out. It was Lena's. You promised. He awoke to find his room freezing. The fire had gone out hours ago. The windows were fogged. His breath came in clouds. And across the inside of his bedroom mirror, something had been written in condensation. Remember the orchard. Daniel's heart thudded. He hadn't thought of that place in years. The orchard behind his childhood home. The one with the broken gate. The place his mother once told him never to go after sunset. He got dressed. Packed his notes, the leather-bound book, and a flashlight. He was going back. The orchard lay behind the old family property, long abandoned, but not forgotten. He arrived by early evening. The sun was dipping low, casting long, sickle-shaped shadows through the dead apple trees. Daniel pushed through the rusted gate. It squealed like a wounded animal. He remembered chasing fireflies here. A younger version of himself. Laughing. Safe. Before the incident. Before Lena. He moved past the tall grass and into the deeper grove. Then he saw it. A tree with bark torn away, as if by claws or time. And carved into its trunk. They want her erased. Daniel touched the carving. The moment his hand made contact, the wind stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The air turned thick, like walking through syrup. And the sound came. A soft hum. Mechanical. Whispered voices layered over a low rumble. He turned. And saw them. Figures. Cloaked. Faceless. Watching. They didn't speak. But Daniel understood. They were not human. And they were not here for peace. He ran. Tripped on roots. Smashed through branches. His flashlight bouncing wildly. The orchard changed behind him. Trees moving where they hadn't. Paths closing. He turned once more. But they were gone. And in their place. A girl. Lena. Standing by the broken gate. I didn't mean to wake them, she said softly. Daniel caught his breath. Who are they? They're the ones who make sure stories like mine don't survive, Lena whispered. I escaped once. But not without cost. Daniel stepped closer. You said the loop would end if the truth was told. She nodded. But the loop doesn't like being broken. It fights back. He looked down. Her hand was trembling. What do they want from you? He asked. They want me, to be forgotten, she said. To be a tale told in fear, not in hope. But I was never meant to scare anyone, Daniel. I was meant to remind them. Of what was lost. Of what was stolen. He reached out, touching her hand. Then let's remind them. She looked up, tears in her eyes. It's time to tell the part you've been avoiding. Daniel froze. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, she said. Tell them what happened that night. He returned home and locked the doors. Sat at his desk. And stared at a blank page. He didn't want to go back to it. But Lena was right. There was a missing piece. The night he first met her. October 17, 1987. He was 10. Caroline had sent him out to collect kindling before dinner. He wandered too far. Followed the sound of music. Gentle humming. That's when he saw her. A girl, standing barefoot near the creek. Dirty dress. Long dark hair. Eyes like glass. She smiled. But Daniel never mentioned something else. He didn't want to. Not even now. But he had to. He'd blacked out. 1 second he was walking toward her. The next, he was inside the water. Sinking. Cold arms pulling him deeper. Not hers. Someone else. Something else. Dark hands. He screamed, bubbles rising. The water thickened, turned black, then red. He nearly drowned. But then. She was there. Lena. She pulled him out. Held him. Hummed the same tune again. That song wasn't random. It was a memory. Of his grandmother. A lullaby only she knew. Back in the present, Daniel wrote until his hands cramped. He wrote the drowning. The arms. The truth. He wrote about the dark thing in the water. The guardian, Lena called it. A creature of the loop. Fed by fear. Strengthened by forgotten things. And when he finished, he heard it again. Knock. 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 Not at the front door. But the mirror. He rose slowly. The mirror was fogging again. Words scrawled. Now they come for you. The lights flickered. The floorboards groaned. Daniel backed away from the mirror. The glass cracked once. Twice. Then. Shattered. But there was no glass on the floor. Only a hole. A perfect circle. He looked into it. And saw eyes staring back. Not Lena's. The man in black. Daniel ran for the book. Flipped it open. Inside, a new page had appeared. If they break through the mirror, the next step is memory. He didn't understand. Until the phone rang. It was his mother. Panicked. "Daniel. I forgot something," she said, trembling. "I don't know where I am. I was just outside feeding the birds, and now, I don't remember the last 10 years. Daniel's blood froze. It had begun. The erasure. He drove all night. When he reached his mother's house, she was sitting on the porch, blank-eyed, murmuring to herself. Her garden was dead. Her books scattered. She didn't know who he was. Not at first. But then she looked into his eyes and whispered. "She came to me last night. Lena. She said it's your turn to protect the truth." Daniel hugged her tightly. The loop wasn't just fighting him now. It was trying to wipe everything clean. He knew what had to be done. The final entry. The final truth. Not just Lena's. His own. Because he'd always thought he was a witness to her story. But maybe. Just maybe. He was part of it. That night, Daniel opened a live broadcast from his study. No news channel. No production. Just him. A chair. A camera. A story. He began to speak. About Lena. About the orchard. The book. The symbols. The threats. About the man in black. About the night in the creek. And about why she chose him. He read from the book. He read the names of others who had forgotten. And the ones who remembered too late. Then. He showed them the mirror. Cracked. Still humming. And said. "If I disappear after this, know that it was because I remembered too much. But if you're hearing this, you remember too. And that means the loop is breaking." He ended the stream. Turned off the lights. And sat in silence. Waiting. Listening. The hum returned. The whispers. Then. A voice. Not Lena. Not the man in black. But his own voice. Coming from the mirror. "It's your turn now, Daniel." The cabin was silent, but Daniel Reed could feel the walls breathing. He sat in the dark, hands trembling, eyes locked on the cracked mirror. It no longer reflected his face. Instead, it showed a hallway he had never seen before, yet somehow recognized. Dimly lit, with flickering wall lamps. Paint peeling. Floor wet with something he didn't want to name. And at the far end, a door. The voice that had come from the mirror, his own voice, still echoed in his ears. "It's your turn now, Daniel." He rose. Moved toward the mirror like it was a portal. It didn't resist him. It welcomed him. And as he stepped through the broken glass, he left the world he knew behind. The hallway air was thick and metallic. His boots squished on the soaked floor as he walked forward. The walls whispered. Not words. Just memory. He heard a dog barking. A lullaby. His mother calling him for dinner. Lena humming. A life replayed in broken echoes. He reached the door. It had no handle. Only a handprint-shaped imprint. Hesitating, he pressed his hand against it. Click. The door opened slowly. And there, in a room that looked like it belonged to a long-abandoned asylum, stood Lena. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was older, but not in age. In knowledge. In truth. Her eyes weren't glassy now. They were burning. "You came," she said. "I didn't have a choice," he replied. "Yes, you did," Lena said softly. "You always did." The room was filled with mirrors. Hundreds of them, in every shape and size. But none showed reflections. Each one showed memories. Daniel saw a boy crying on a staircase. A woman running through a storm. A man writing in a diary before flames engulfed the room. He stepped closer to one. It showed his own 10th birthday. The cake. The candles. But something was wrong. In the corner, just beyond the party, the man in black. Watching. Always watching. Lena walked beside him. This place is called the Remembering Room. Daniel turned. What is this? It's the edge of the loop, she explained. Where stories come to die, or live forever. He stared at her. Why me? Why this? Lena took a deep breath. And then she told him everything. The truth behind Lena. Lena had not been born. She had been created, by memory itself. Years ago, a little girl vanished in a forest during a war. People searched for her. Her mother went mad with grief. Villagers whispered of spirits. Myths formed. Stories were told. But no one ever remembered her name. That forgetting created a vacuum. And in that void, something formed, a consciousness built from sorrow, longing, and the ache of being erased. That was Lena. She wasn't a ghost. She was a story. A living embodiment of those we forget too soon. But if you're a story, Daniel asked, how are you here? Talking to me? Because you believed in me, she said. You gave me a name. You pulled me back. And now the loop wants to stop me, Daniel whispered. Lena nodded. The loop thrives on forgetting, she said. On apathy. When people stop caring, stop remembering, the loop grows stronger. Daniel looked around the mirrors again. And these? These are all the people who tried to break it. People who told forbidden truths. People who remembered what should have been lost. Daniel's stomach turned. And what happened to them? Lena walked to a mirror showing a little girl being silenced by men in suits. They were erased, she said. One by one. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. So what do we do? Lena turned to him, eyes fierce. We finish your story. You tell everything. And then you choose. Choose what? Whether you return to your world, or take my place. The words knocked the breath out of him. Your place, he asked. She nodded. Once someone carries the full memory of the forgotten, they can stay here and guard the stories. Keep them alive. Keep the loop from swallowing them. Daniel stared at her. You want me to become you? I want you to have a choice, she said. I never had one. He felt dizzy. And if I go back? Then the loop will come again, she said. Eventually. For someone else. But you'll have bought us time. And maybe, left behind a truth strong enough to outlast the forgetting. He sat down, head in hands. You make it sound like there's no right answer. There isn't, she said gently. Only what you can live with. Daniel stood. Then I need to see one more thing. Lena nodded. She led him to the largest mirror in the room. It was shaped like a door. Fog covered the glass. She touched it. And it cleared. Inside, Daniel saw himself, as a child. Walking through the forest. Following a girl. And then, behind him, a second version of himself. Taller. Older. Watching from the trees. He gasped. It's you, Lena said. You were always part of the loop. That day in the forest, you were meant to die. The man in black was supposed to take you. But I didn't, Daniel whispered. Because you pulled yourself out. You created a break. A loop inside the loop. That's why you remember things others don't. Why, you could see me. Daniel watched in horror as the older version of him disappeared into smoke, and the child version escaped the river. You saved yourself, Lena said. But now, others need saving too. Silence filled the room. Daniel faced Lena. What if I can't carry it all? He asked. You already are, she said, gently pressing her forehead to his. Then she stepped back. The mirrors dimmed. The hallway returned. The choice loomed. Back at the door, the mirror he'd come through flickered. It still showed his cabin. His chair. The fire glowing softly. A world he could return to. But next to it, another mirror shimmered. It showed the orchard. The tree with the clawed bark. But now, people stood beneath it. Dozens. Hundreds. Holding candles. Reading from journals. Whispering names. Remembering. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the leather-bound book. He opened it. The final page was blank. Until now. Words appeared. The story ends when you stop telling it. Or it begins again when you choose to stay. He took a deep breath. And made his choice. 1 year later. A new podcast exploded in popularity. Tales that were almost forgotten, hosted by an anonymous speaker with a deep, steady voice. Each episode told a story of someone who vanished. Someone erased. Someone whose name had been almost lost. The host never gave his own name. But those who listened closely swore his voice sounded familiar. Some said he once wrote a book. Others said he disappeared after exposing a strange forest girl. And others still claimed to see a man in black watching outside their window after each episode aired. But in a quiet cabin, deep in the woods, a fire crackled. A man sat in a chair. Across from him sat a girl. Not young. Not old. Just eternal. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Because somewhere, out there, someone was remembering. And that was enough. Final lesson. In a world that forgets too quickly, remembering becomes an act of resistance. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to keep a story alive, no matter how unbelievable, no matter how painful, because memory is what makes us human.